How's it going, everybody? I'm Matt. I'm Director of Strategic Development here at SlantRange. This is Mike, VP of Engineering and co-founder. This is our first SlantRange live session, and we get a ton of questions all the time, and just thought this would be a cool platform to open it up to the community, share some of our knowledge, maybe learn from you guys. And this is not intended to be for sales. We just kind of want to build up the platform here and get some information out there with the community. So we'll just go ahead and take a look at the questions here and start firing away. By the way, we got Abe and Will behind the cameras here. Hey guys.
So Will's on Periscope over there on Twitter, so wherever you're looking.
Looks like Wesley logged in, gave us a thumbs up. Got any questions?
Just got a shout out from Midwest Unmanned. Thanks for joining.
What's up, guys? Thanks for joining. We did get one question, I guess, offline yesterday after the email blast about flight planning. I think there's a lot of questions around that. We did have a partnership there with MatPilot. I know a lot of you folks were using that. We had to move away from MatPilot for various reasons that I won't go into the details, but I think as you all know now, we are partnered up with DroneDeploy. They obviously have a great platform for flight planning. You can use our sensor in their flight planning, no problem. We got a blog post up about how to do that. If anybody has any specific questions, fire away, but that is one that we got yesterday. Please hold the camera still. You got that hit?
Sorry, Ken. That's my bad.
Can you go into detail why a multi-band sensor is better than a filtered camera?
Yeah, maybe we'll have Mike answer that one. He's our VP of Engineering, probably best qualified, but yeah, go ahead.
Sure, absolutely. So there's a couple things about multispectral system that are particularly useful when trying to measure vegetation. So vegetation responds in some specific narrow bands to stress conditions, and we're looking at those specific bands to find information about the health of the plant. The broader band systems that are just a modified color camera, they're looking at a much wider range of the spectrum, so they don't get quite the same narrow information. And the way that that's done, there's some bleed through into the other channels, so you don't get just pure information for that channel. You get, I guess it's just spectral bleed through from the way the filters work.
Sounds good. We got a couple other questions coming in. Andrew Cutter, how you doing? I've definitely exchanged quite a few emails with you. How do you use SlantRange on a fixed wing? Yeah, there really aren't any specific limitations on using a fixed wing or a multi-copter. We intentionally designed the system that way. It doesn't actually communicate with the aircraft at all. So fixed wing is perfectly fine. Obviously it tends to be longer endurance. We do have some options in our software that does some kind of specific things in the processing to handle fixed wing flights versus multi-copter flights, mostly just related to how they fly. A multi-copter tends to be pitched forward. Fixed wing sometimes can fly crabbed a bit, so there's a selection box in our software to do that. But for the most part, really doesn't matter. Depends on what you want to do and how much area you want to cover. Let's see, please hold a camera so I can visualize the size. I guess we probably should have brought one in. If Mike takes a question here, I could probably go grab one. Next question from Trey Reed. Can you save flight plans in DroneDeploy so you can repeat the flight at a later date? Absolutely. That's one of the big advantages. You can create your flight plan either out in the field or even offline, and then you can save that and reuse it as many times as you like. So certainly doable in DroneDeploy.
I can run around the
Sensor.
Yeah, sure. Let's bring one in.
Peter Philip Marks from Down Under. Let's see what else we got here.
Well, there was a second part, I guess, to your question, Trey. Is it free for SlantRange customers, DroneDeploy? Yes, the basic flight planning is. We do have some additional features and more in the works that will be part of the paid tiers, but the flight planning itself is definitely free. Looking for a way to mount SlantRange on an X8 copter or traditional copter, followed by boom. Nice, I like that.
Copter boom.
Oh, copter boom.
Copter boom. Was that just like boom? That's my question.
Yeah, mounting is also very simple. Again, it was intended to be on any aircrafts. We do supply some mounting kits that you can use on some of the standard aircraft, an X8 for sure. We've got folks flying on an X8, but there's really just 3 mounting points. It's really straightforward, no gimbal required. So yeah, no problem there on the X8. Let's see, does the camera have time-lapse for auto-triggering? It is internally triggered on its own time basis. You don't have to supply an input trigger. If there are cases where you'd like to do that, we can talk about that. It may be a bit of custom development, but right now they are completely internally triggered.
So just quickly here, I'll go ahead and show you guys what the sensor looks like. So this is the sensor in the box that it ships in. This is our ambient illumination sensor. This mounts to the top of the aircraft and looks up and measures the downwelling radiation or the intensity of the sunlight. And then this is the multispectral sensor. It of course mounts underneath and looks down. So that gives you
That's the size, Ken.
And all in, it's about 420 grams. Kent's got another question here. If the data processing is done in the camera, why is there a monthly charge? So our processing currently starts on board the camera, which is definitely a little bit different approach. We're constantly pushing more and more of that processing into the sensor, and you'll see that coming soon. But right now, the processing is completed on the ground in our software, and that software is where the license charge comes from. Can you fly with a Phantom 3? It's a very common question. Unfortunately, no. If you could get it off the ground, it'd be very limited flight time. However, we have often said that you can't fly on a Phantom or an Inspire. We may be pulling back on that a bit. It looks like flying on the Inspire may be feasible. We're kind of analyzing flight times right now, but that could be another option. I know there are a lot of Phantoms and Inspires out there, but Phantom, probably not. Miss any?
No, that's it. Kent says thank you. You're welcome, Kent. Yeah, thanks for the questions, guys.
I think we had a couple other come in. Anything else on the list that we should talk about?
Jack Wilcox just asked one there. I guess we could go to that with your, yeah.
With 20% overlap, how many acres are you getting in a flight with the Matrice? Great question. Two-part answer, I guess. We've got quite a few of our customers flying with 2 batteries on a Matrice. Our sensor obviously has to go on the bottom, and you can put 2 batteries on top. That gives you flight time on the order of 35 minutes, I think.
Yep.
So a 20% overlap, again, depending on your altitude, but for a typical flight, somewhere between 150 to 200 acres, I think, is a safe bet. Possibly more with the 2 battery setup. With 1 battery, you're down around, I guess, half that, obviously 17 minutes or so, and that's closer to, 50 to 100 acres, something like that.
Yeah.
Let's see, are images stored on board the sensor, or do we need an SD card? They are stored on board. Technically, they are on an SD card. It's not a removable card, but they are stored on board. And then they're downloaded with an Ethernet cable. So you just plug a cable in after you land and download them to the computer. I've got quite a few coming in here. Maybe I'll give one of these to you, Mike. Tips on how to sell the service. Cost savings for farmers. That's a great question, and something we spend a lot of time on here. Hopefully most of you have seen that we've kicked off our blog. We plan to provide quite a few case studies coming up here about specific use cases that our customers have used, how to interpret the data, what value they're providing. We've got a really cool one coming up about finding irrigation leaks. So keep an eye out for that, but many more to come. We do have, 6 or 8 examples right now on our website that you can click through. But yeah, definitely lots more coming on that topic.
Looks like the next one here is how high are we flying to conduct a seed germination survey? That's from Kent Burnett. So it depends a bit on what type of crop you're flying and how big the crop is. So for example, we've got customers who are doing population maps of lettuce fields. So lettuce tends to be flown at a little bit later stage of growth, I guess, when the plants are a little bit larger, and those can be flown, depends on the plant, but 60 meters or maybe even a little bit higher. But other crops that are smaller, like maybe a corn crop, is typically more like 40-meter altitude, and that's usually flown at V2, V3, and the plants are a bit smaller.
Yeah, and you will see, I think you've probably seen too, we have an app in the DroneDeploy app market. We got a lot of new features coming into that. Part of those will be a little flight calculator that will help you plan how to actually plan your mission. So you put in the parameters of your crop, what you're trying to measure. Is it a stress flight? Is it a population flight? And we'll give you some guidance on how to set your flight parameters. So that'll be built into the DroneDeploy app here shortly. Let's see, how big do plants need to be for the plant count function to work? Small onions, carrots. Also, if plants are touching, does it still work? I guess you can follow up on that when you touch on some of that. But.
Yeah, I'll just go right into it. So if plants are touching one another, then that's not typically a good application. The algorithm will see plants that are touching as a single plant instead of as two individual plants, so it counts them as one. That affects the results. And how big they need to be, well, again, it just it depends on flight altitude, but I'd say typically you'd like to fly plants that are I guess at least an inch across their smallest dimension.
Yeah, I think another way to put it too is for our plant counting to work, you typically want to call it at least 3 to 5 pixels on each plant. So depending on how big the plant is, that drives how high you can fly to put that many pixels on each plant, if that makes sense.
So
but again, that's built into our calculator.
Yeah, you could fly very small plants, you'd just be flying very low, and at some point it becomes inefficient.
Right. Let's see, Scott, tree crops and onion crops, definitely. We, for tree crops and basically any other elevated crops, we have some unique processing that filters out shadows. Obviously, elevated crops tend to cast big shadows. We filter those out on the front end. That certainly helps. Same thing with grapes and vineyards. Onions for sure. We got some really cool data up from Washington State on onion crops. Works very well. Let's see, what other row crops can you utilize for stand counts aside from corn? Is that the same elevation or would you fly lower? I think we've probably addressed that second part, but in terms of the row crops, the tool was developed around corn. I mean, that was kind of the initial demand, but we've certainly expanded it beyond that. So we've used it for all kinds of vegetable crops, cauliflower, broccoli, heads of lettuce, what other ones? Basically, I mean, to answer your question, it's certainly not limited to corn. It was built around that, but like I said, it's been kind of expanded since then. But any time there's good clean separation between the plants is ideal for plant counting.
Yep. So you're coming in fast. I've lost.
Bruno Visconti. Apologies if I mispronounced that. What's the best height for a good resolution? 100 meters.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what you're flying. What stage you're flying at. So when we say that to do crop population maps on smaller plants, what we mean is that flying lower gives you better resolution. So you certainly can fly at 100 meters if you're doing stress analysis of a relatively developed crop. 100, 120 meters, absolutely. If you want to measure small plants, then that's when you're flying a little lower.
Couple familiar names here popping up. Jesse Badger, how you doing? Good to hear from you. Are we able to give a complete count for an entire field versus the highlighted section? That is coming. We've demonstrated it here, so that'll be released shortly, but yes, that is a common request. Saw another one here. Cassidy Rankin, how you doing? Can photos be processed on DroneDeploy? That's coming as well. I'm actively working with the team to get that launched. You can take our process data, our complete maps, and upload them to DroneDeploy, but if you want to use some of the DroneDeploy data products, 3D maps, for example, can you take our data and process them in DroneDeploy? Yes, we're certainly headed that way, so keep an eye out for that.
So we got a question here about processing NDVI and slant view. Does it give you an overall field score? I think what you mean there is, do we give statistics on the entire field? And we do. We can output what area of the field is at different levels of NDVI, stress, all the different data products. How much area in the field is at that level?
Right. Shane Ring, certainly recognize that name. Let's see, is SlantRange post-processing on the tablet only, or do you also offer additional post-processing on desktop? So right now it's Windows-based. Cross-platform versions are coming. You can certainly use a Windows-based tablet, but it is Windows-based, 64-bit, really the only requirement. Does SlantRange software offer a historical temporal analysis? That's something that we've been working on for quite a while as well too. You'll see that coming shortly, but we talk about this a lot, but with our calibrated data, that really opens up the possibility to compare data sets over time. We get that request all the time, so that is certainly coming as well. Inside one season and from season to season, so yes, absolutely. Let's see, Kent Burnett again. How do you discriminate a field that has been hailed on or one which wind has lodged, like wheat, for instance? I guess you can explain that one, Mike. We've got a couple really good examples of lodging in canola and also wheat, and our smart detection tool is probably the best one there.
Yep, yeah, so, well, I guess first of all, quickly about hail, we've done some work with hail in corn, and typically the tool we use there is canopy closure combined with stress kind of gives you a good indication of how the crop is doing in a hail situation. So obviously as the hail goes through and hits the plants, then that affects your canopy closure and also it stresses the plant. As far as the lodging is concerned, yeah, we've got some experience with looking at lodging in a couple different crops, and we're able to look up at see a different spectral signature where the plants have laid over, and we can actually map out any other places in the field where that's occurring.
See a quick hello from Tom Stone. How you doing? Thanks for checking in. No question there, but just saying hi, and I will say hi to Mike Rader as well. A new one here. Any tools planned for ag researchers? For example, a tool to generate an overlay of individual plots. So we have been working on things like that. We're looking at maybe a new version of our software tool that just allows you to take our data and export it into third-party tools. I know we've kind of mentioned that a few times to several folks. So that's kind of targeted at researchers, meaning you can take our data, accurate calibrated data, but go process it whatever way you'd like. I don't know if that's exactly answering your question, but that's certainly one option where we're targeting our system for researchers. Did we miss any? They were flying fast and furious there.
Yeah, they were coming through pretty quick.
I think we got them all. I think you guys got them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw a question on here about where the calculator is available. I don't know if that's one that displayed for you guys as well.
Yeah. Right now we've been kind of sharing it with people that ask for it. But again, we're going to build it into our DroneDeploy app for sure, and then maybe provide it as a standalone app. If anybody needs it, just shoot us an email. We can send it off. It's pretty straightforward. But again, you put in the dimensions of what you're trying to measure, and we give some guidance on altitude and speed and overlap and that sort of thing. So anybody that wants it, just send us a note. Do you guys have a cloud shadow correction solution in your software? You can take that one, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the entire intent of the ambient illumination sensor. So we're measuring the intensity of the light in the different spectra that's coming down every time we take an image. So wherever we are in space, when we take the image, we're measuring the light coming down at that point, and then we use that to correct for changing lighting conditions.
Jack Wilcox, tractor flow for variable rate application, nitrogen mapping, and recommendations. So one of the export options of our data is Shapefiles, and that's kind of the most common format to ingest them into some kind of farm management tool where you can generate prescription. Right now that happens obviously with the expertise of an agronomist. People certainly have visions of sort of automating that workflow, and we're certainly keeping close tabs on that. But right now, you can take our data, ingest it into these tools, and then just use those to generate your variable rate applications. Let's see here. Another one from Jesse. How are you mounting the second battery on the M100? And if you have directions, can you shoot me some? Yeah, those are relatively custom right now. We're trying to work with some folks on some standard packages to do that. We do have a couple of guys that we've been referring folks to, so again, I can shoot you a quick note on that. But it's pretty straightforward. I mean, nothing too custom, but just getting the two batteries up on top and then our sensor on the bottom. Do you have another one, Abe?
Yeah, Kent Burnett had one a little bit higher. What kind of warranty does the camera have?
Yeah. You want to take that one, Mike?
I actually don't remember what our warranty policy is. Do you know it offhand?
Yeah, I think it's 1 year, manufacturing parts and labor, that sort of thing. So, I mean, if anything breaks or was clearly put together wrong, that sort of thing, it's 1 year. Follow up from Cassidy. Sorry, not illumination correction. When shadows from partial cloud cover isn't part of an image, incident light sensor and shade, but part of the ground is sunlight illuminated. You follow that one?
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. So it depends on where the sensor is with respect to the cloud in the air, I guess. So if the cloud is shading the IS sensor, then we get that. That's the spectral content we're reading, and then that's what we're applying to the image on the ground.
Yeah, I think one piece of that is our field of view is relatively small. I mean, you're not looking at a huge swath of Earth. You're looking straight down through about 30-degree field of view. So that case is probably relatively rare. Yeah.
Right.
Wesley, you may have asked this before. I think I remember seeing it now. Is it effective on vineyards? Yes, we do have quite a few folks using it on vineyards. There are some special considerations to consider. We'd be happy to share those with you. But again, related to elevated crops and shadows, a lot of times with vineyards, there is some other kind of vegetation, be it grass or weeds or something else between the rows. We've got some tools to filter those out, but it does require a little bit of customization on the processing. All the tools are there to do it, but we'd be happy to help you on how to do that.
All right, just got another one here from Ken asking how many hours on each side of noon is the data collection effective. So we typically tell people to shoot for 3 hours on either side of noon. There are certainly cases where it's effective outside of that range, but and that depends on the crop type and your use case. But over a wide range of conditions, 3 hours on either side of noon is pretty good.
Let's see.
Forrest. Hey, Forrest.
Hey, Forrest. Thanks for chiming in. With more of us in the service business facing customers, any thoughts on putting the maps and statistics into a customer-friendly report format? Absolutely. That's another question we get a lot, which was the intent of this forum, I guess. We do provide a pretty basic statistics report that we offer to customize a bit. I mean, you can brand it or put things in different places if you'd like, but sounds like it might be helpful to put together some templates that you guys could choose from. We kind of had visions of the map with maybe some key details, highlighting hotspots, that sort of thing. I assume that's what you're referring to. So yeah, it's good to hear that that's still of interest and probably something we should be working on.
The next one here is a question about the proper flight altitude for blackberries or vineyards. So blackberries, I'm not sure. I would need to look into the details about how those are grown. Vineyards, again, it's typically between 60 and 120 meters. I guess depending on the stage of growth of the vine and the time of year. But typically vineyards, you're looking at a pretty big plant, and you can fly relatively high.
Another question from Trey. Any concern about moving objects affecting the ability of the software to stitch the images together, moving pivot vehicles nearby? Our processing solution is a combination of kind of the two major techniques out there. One being what's called kind of traditional image registration, where you're looking at features in the image. The other being what's called direct georeferencing. So our sensor has its own GPS and its own IMU, so it knows where it is in the sky and where it's looking, and that gives you some indication of where the images should lay on the ground. So given that we're combining both of those, we can really kind of pull from the best of those. And to answer your question, we don't typically have problems with moving objects. If the pivot moves from one path to the next, you may see that, but in terms of stitching together the map, it shouldn't cause any problems or crashes or failed stitches, that sort of thing.
So the next question kind of follows on to that same point about wind blowing the plant around while you're doing the data collection, and I think it's basically the same answer given the method that we're using to create the mosaic. We're relatively robust to motion in the image.
Right. You miss any, Abe?
No, I think that's
All right.
all over it.
Yeah, we're
Good
coming up on half an
questions.
hour. We didn't intend this to be, too long or take too much time out of anybody's day, but this is basically exactly what we had in mind. Just kind of some free form questions, offering up answers for anybody that's got questions lingering. We do definitely plan on doing this again. Maybe every couple of weeks or so. Feel free to chime in and throw out the questions real time, but you can also send us notes anytime before then, and we'll keep track and do our best to answer them all. So I guess until next time, thanks guys, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for the
everybody.
Thank you.
questions. Thanks for
Appreciate
the
your time.
questions.
All right.